This is a lecture from Open Tuition. To benefit from the lecture, you should download the free lecture notes from opentuition.com.
So let's move to the next topic, which is residence. It's an important topic that's been introduced into the TX exam. Now the rules are decidedly complicated, but you'll be pleased to know that the next couple of pages is all the information that you require in order to be able to do this. It's important because whether you are resident in the UK or not will have a serious impact on both income tax, capital gains and inheritance tax. If you are UK resident, then you are liable to income tax on your worldwide income. Okay, if you are non-resident, then only your UK income, and that depends on these rules. Now they are detailed and they are based on the number of days that you spend in the UK. Now this table is part of the tax tables and therefore you don't need to learn it, but you can then use it to help you to answer the questions. Now, in any tax exams, there are going to be certain areas, certain sections that you find more difficult. Most students that come across the first time find this quite difficult. It could come up as part of multiple choice questions. It's not going to come up as a major question. It's more likely to come up as a major question in the advanced tax paper, where the examiner is quite keen on this topic. So if you do struggle with it, then it should be less of a priority than learning the income tax computation and all the stuff that we've done the rest of this chapter. If you have found the rest of this chapter to be easier to deal with, then you can spend a lot of time doing this. Don't waste time learning all of this and not learning what we've just done. Okay, it's about prioritizing and focusing your attention in the best place. The idea in the exam is to get more than 50%. Ideally, if you're going to go on and do advanced tax, you need to get 65, 70, because everything you learn here is the basis for the next exam. But you do have to prioritize your time. We all have lives, we all have things we need to deal with, and only a certain amount of time to do for study. So as we go through each chapter, you'll see exam technique, and I'll give you some clues as to how to best to focus your time. So these rules are in your tax tables, and therefore you need to use them. Particularly these dates down this side are very helpful. So to determine if somebody is resident or not, then you have to answer these following questions, and you have to do them in this order. Step 1. Does the individual satisfy any of the automatic overseas tests? So, was the individual in the UK for less than 16 days? Or 46 days, less than 46 days, but not resident in any of the previous 3 years? Or 91 days in the UK and you work overseas. So these things might be, 16 days might be somebody that comes to the UK to perform a certain task, maybe to a concert, or I don't know, they're here for a short time. They're not classed as resident. They fulfil the automatic overseas test. Therefore, they're not resident in the UK and don't have to pay any UK tax, except if they've earned any UK income in those 16 days. 46 days is a bit bigger period of time, but you've not been resident in the previous 3 years, so the information will be given to you in the exam. Unfortunately, you have to remember these rules, but these dates you'll find in the tax tables, so that helps you some way to remember. 91 days and you work overseas. So you're UK resident. For example, if I had a job and I went to work in, I don't know, France, full time, and I only came home and visited the UK for less than 91 days, then I am not UK resident, and therefore only pay UK income tax on my UK earned income. But as I'm in France and earning over there, then that's not likely to be a problem. So, yep, if you fulfill those criteria, you're not UK resident. If the answer is no, you have to go to step 2. Step 2, does the individual satisfy any of the automatic UK tests? So, does he or she spend at least 183 days in the UK? That's more than 6 months. Always do it in days. Or do you have a home in the UK? If you have a home in the UK, then you're treated as automatically UK resident. Do you work here full time? Okay. If the answer is yes, you're UK resident and you'll pay UK tax on all of your income worldwide. If the answer is no, we're not automatically non-resident, we're not automatically resident, then you have to go for the sufficient ties test. There are 5 of them and you do have to learn them. Sorry, but you have to. Do you have a spouse or partner or a child under 18 in the UK? That's one of the ties. Accommodation, which is used during the tax year. In the UK, are you in the UK for more than 90 in either of the previous 2 tax years? You spend more time in the UK than any other country, or you do substantive work. Now, these rules are complex, as it says here, but only those rules will be examinable. All right, let me give you some examples because this helps. Sebastian, not previously resident in the UK and spent 35 days here. Step 1, because that's the one. Is he automatically not resident? Those automatic tests prove he's not resident because he was here for less than 46 days and he'd never been resident. That is the level of the questions that you would be asked in that illustration. A little bit more complicated. Illustration number 3. Fernando has not been previously resident in the UK but bought a holiday home here in May 23 and lived in it for 140 days. The remainder of the year he lived in his home in Spain. Step 1. Fernando was in the UK for too long to be treated as automatically not resident. But step 2. Not long enough to be treated as automatically resident, and nor did he have his only home here. So, step 3, therefore, using the table, as he's been here in the UK between 121 and 182 days, so using the table, and only has one tie, i.e. has a UK home, and he's not been previously UK resident, he's therefore not resident in 23-24. Go through these again, make sure you understand them. And the 4th illustration, Jensen, always been UK resident, spends 10 months of the year here, but in May bought an apartment overseas where he lived for most of the tax year. He only here for 50 days, where he stayed with his family and his wife and his children. He spent more than 15 days in the UK, so he's not automatically not resident. He will not be automatically resident, as he's not spent 183 days, nor is it his only home. He's been here between 46 and 90 days. He has been a resident and he has 3 ties. So by moving abroad, he's not lost his residence. Even though he spends most of his time out there, he's still UK resident because he has 3 ties. Okay. Now, moving on from there, this is a new area that we've got in the manual this year, exam technique. And you'll see that at the end of most of the chapters, and it's giving you an insight into the sort of questions that you may get based on the information that you've learned in your chapter. So, multiple choice questions, section A, single topics, only ever one topic. Now, it's either write or it's wrong because it's marked by a computer. Okay, so this is a typical question. Helena is a sole trader and she has taxable income of 106 and dividend income of 1500, but made a gross gift. You see, that's different wording. That's the gross figure. You don't have to gross it up. What entitlement does she have to personal allowance? So that would be a calculation that you would need to do. So that's the allowance. So her net income is 108,300. So that's that and that added together, less that figure, brings it down to 106,300. What's the limit? The limit is 100,000. So we've got a balance of 6,300, which we need to do 50% of, which is 3,150, giving her an adjusted personal allowance of 9,420. Now, the answer to this could either be a box like that, where you've got to write in 9,420, or it could be A, B, C, or D. Okay. If it's A, B, C, or D, there will be a number in each situation. Always try and work it out first and then find the answer. Don't just tick what you think is right. Okay. Now, obviously, none of this working will show. So that's just your working to make sure you're satisfied with that one. Now, because it says the amount of personal allowance, it's more likely to be that you'll have to write it into a box. Practice these online. Here we go. We have one here about Hannah, UK resident in 22-23, works in Dubai 23-24. What is the maximum numbers of days that she can spend in the UK and be treated as not resident? Okay. Now, because she is working full time, the answer is 90. And there you can see A, B, C, D, and you've got to rack your brains to work out which one is which. Now, you could delete some. It's definitely not that, because if she's here for half the year, then she can't be working full time. So common sense will help you sometimes to do this. If you're still unsure, check the rates and see if that helps. Okay, so multiple choice question number 3. Again, a variety of things here. Henry has the following income. He's got property income, bank interest, and dividend. What's his income tax liability? Okay, so if we add all of those up together, okay, it comes to 24,050. Okay, he's going to get a full personal allowance. Okay, now obviously all I'm doing here is just making quick notes. I could do a full pro forma, and if you look on the model answer, there is a full pro forma so you can check it. But I'm just doing a rough one here so that you can see how your brain could work if you were dealing with this. So we're down to 11,480. Okay, so the personal allowance always comes off that first. And you will see in the model answer that we end up with 8,580, which is the non-savings income at 20%. Now the savings income, the first 1,000 is at 0%, and then the balance of the 2,400 is also at 20%, and the dividend of 500 is at 0%. So those two, that works out, let me go down there, at 1716. That works out at 280, which gives us 1996, and the answer is A. Now, if you can remember that this personal allowance comes off the non-savings income first, you could do a rough model, a rough answer like this on a sheet of paper or on the scratch pad on the computer, whichever you feel is the most appropriate. If, however, you are less confident, then I would write it out in a full pro forma, just like we've done. There is plenty of time in this exam to do that. Okay, so those are the kind of multiple choice questions that you could get. And here is a larger section B, section C question, where you've got to do, sometimes you have to do several calculations. You might have to work out benefits in kind, which you'll see in a different chapter, some property income, which you might see in a different chapter, and bring them all together into an income tax computation. And here you can see that she's got the following income: got trade profits, she's got a job, she's got some bank interest, she's got some dividend income, and she's got some qualifying interest, which is a deduction. That's the amount paid, which means it needs to be grossed up. Always thinking this as you're going along. And whether or not she gets any personal allowance reduction, whether or not that will bring her below, or whether she's high rate. Okay, so what we're going to do is have a look at the model answer, and then you can see how this works. So in the model answer, you can see there that again we've got a heading, and we have the 4 columns. You may want to do that with there. And the question has been copied into the answer. You can see all the various different incomes there. The trade income, the employment income, the interest in the correct column, the dividend income, all added up, nice and neat, well presented. We've taken off the qualifying interest and entitled to a full allowance in full because it's not over the 100,000. Okay, income tax. The basic rate band has been extended, you see here down the bottom, by the gross payment, because the question said that that's what she paid. So we've got 40,200. Okay, so it's basic rate all the way up to there. So the basic rate band, the employment income and the earned income is 32,430 at 20%. Savings income, because she is high rate, she only gets £500 at 0%. The balance of 3.5 is therefore at 20%. First 1,000 of dividends is at 0%, and the balance is split because she's hit here the limit for basic rate. That's because she's base rate, and then obviously into the high rate. Don't forget to always go back to the question to check whether or not there's any pay as you earn deducted at source. And with all the model answers, you will see the notes at the bottom which help to explain. Okay, so that's the end of this chapter.